Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. I just got another box of reels in from one of our viewers. This one came from Lynne from Washington. And it's got three Abu Garcia 6501 C3s, which is the lefty version of the 6500. So if you've got a 6500, for the most part, what I'm going to show you is going to be identical, with the exception of one cranks from the left side, one cranks from the right. So what I would suggest, if you're ever going to work on these reels, is go out to the site and pull the schematic. And this one, if you simply go into the internet search and put in Abu schematics, you'll come up to the Abu Garcia site and you'll be able to go down the list. In this case, find the Ambassadeur 6501 C3, and that'll give you a picture of what's going on in the reel. And what's going on in this reel is, even though the free spool release is out, the reel's not cranking. So there's something going on in the free spool release area. We'll take it apart and we'll try and figure it out, and we'll go from there. So you'll learn how to take apart the 6501, or with a little imagination, the 6500, and you'll learn how to tune these up and problem diagnose if it's more than just a simple fix. We're going to start by taking off the handle and the stuff on the outside of the gear side plate. I like to do that while the reel is while the side plate is on the reel. You could do this when it's off the reel, but it's just easier for me to do it this way. So I take the nut cap with the retaining screw. You'll notice while I'm doing this, two things. I have a protective glove on my hand to try and keep most of the contaminants and oils and lubes and the like off my hands. I also use a parts tray so that as I'm disassembling the reel, I'm putting the pieces of parts that I take off into the parts tray, and that way I know where to find them when I go back to reassemble the reel. All right, next up then would be the handle nut. And this one comes off clockwise. So if you're used to righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, this is backwards. You're going to go clockwise to loosen the handle nut. And then there's an E-clip in here, and it's called an E-clip because it looks like the letter E. There's sometimes it's mistaken for a C-clip. I do that all the time. But there's actually a second prong in here that adds that middle of the E versus C. So this is the little handle clip that's used. Again, looks like the letter E, into my parts basket. That enables me to take the handle off. And then we have the adjuster nut that can come off of that. And again, this is a lefty reel, so things kind of go backwards on this. Okay, again, there should be a tension washer in here. See if we can get it out this way. If not, not a problem. This is the tension washer that the handle adjuster presses against, and it presses onto a ferrule inside of the anti-reverse bearing on this reel. All right, 3 screws hold the case on then. We'll take these out, and then we'll have the side case off. Now, as I mentioned, you could take the side plate off without taking the handle and pieces off, but I just find it's easier to get those pieces off when it's attached to the reel. These screws line up into cross posts, one on the reel seat and the other two are up top on the 2 solid posts. Just back them off completely, and then we'll be able to take this piece off, and the axle shaft came out with that, which is fine. This is your spool assembly and the back end of the reel, which we'll do after we find out what's going on here. There's 2 screws that hold on the side plate then. And again, if you're getting confused or if you need to take a look at it, here's the 2 screws we're working on right now in the side plate. These were the 3 that came off the bar. And once we pull that off, we'll have access to the internal free spool mechanism, which is here. And then we'll also work on the gears, which is up here. So we can take the 2 screws off. They're Phillips head screwdrivers, and they're a little bit bigger than the nut cap. But again, if you're having any issues, take pictures along the way. I'm certainly taking pictures along the way. I have this video running I also have a little bit of experience with this reel as well. And then once you have those two off, we can pull off the case. And in the case, we have two things going on here. We have a ferrule, which rides on the gear shaft, and we have the anti-reverse bearing underneath here. And those appear to be just fine and clean, so we're going to leave them at that. And then let's just take this apart, make sure it's clean, see if we can understand why that trigger isn't firing all the time. Probably just a little bit of grease buildup, so we'll go underneath there and we'll make sure that it works properly. So the next off, we can pull this whole gear sleeve off now that we took the E-clip off. And we can also pull off the pieces underneath. These are your drag washer assembly. I'm going to leave them right there for now. And then we'll go pull the gear itself, the spool gear. I'm going to lay these on the table. Normally I would put these in there, but this is what we're trying to get to right here. There's one more washer. It's just a little collar washer that sits on the bottom of the sleeve. We can take that off just to show you that. I'll put that in my little basket. And then this assembly is just resting on two posts. It's actually the side plate that holds this on. It's got two spring tongs which go over the free spool release, and they just rest on two posts, one on each side here. So we're going to go ahead and pull that off. And again, I'm doing this because a lot of people tend to take reels apart and then they can't remember where the pieces and parts came from. That's why we're doing a complete disassembly of this. But also it seems to have a little bit of trouble triggering. So in that case, we want to make sure that the springs are okay. They appear to be. Next off then would be the little arm bar that goes with the release that pushes up on it. These two ridges, this will be riding like so, and those two ridges will push this up to disengage the spool, and when it triggers back it lies flat, so you can see it moves out, moves in, moves out, moves in, and this is actually the way you want it resting when you are reeling the reel. Okay, I'm just going to lay those off to the side for a moment. And then two more pieces. We have the piece here, which is the arm, that's the throw. And we have one more piece on here, which is the swing arm for the free spool release mechanism. All right, so there's just a little bit of buildup and stuff on that side plate. Let's go ahead and just clean that off. And it looks like grease, so I'm just going to use a paper towel here just to make sure that if there was anything in the track that was causing it to not return easily, that it's all kind of cleaned up and out of the way. Sometimes you get some grease from the spool gear that travels on down and gets trapped behind some of those moving parts, and if that's the case, then you get a little bit of trouble with it operating smoothly. Okay, so let's go put this back together then. This is the throw arm that's going to hold the two pieces for the mechanism. We'll put that on first. And then they kind of build up. So this is your release arm. That's going to go through the case. And you can't get this one wrong. This one's got a bigger hole than this one. This one's going to go on top. But again, if you had questions, just go back to that schematic and it'll show you. This one we just want to make sure it's clear here as well. So then that goes on next, and that's going to sit like this. So next up then would be the spool, and since we're doing a service on this one, we're going to go put some grease on the spool gear. And I'm using a fishing reel grease. It's the Penn Reels grease. It doesn't have to be Abu Ambassadeur grease. Each manufacturer tends to have one. What I just typically tell folks is make sure that it's a fishing reel grease and not some other kind of grease. This is the spool side. The spool has got a little connector in the back here, kind of a T on there. It's going to rest in these grooves. If you put it in this way, which is possible to do, the reel will not engage. So make sure that you have the spool side facing outward. And then we can go put the gear assembly back on. So remember that little collar washer there, that little brass piece goes next. And then we can put the main gear assembly on. This is the click ratchet. This is what the release is going to fit into, and when you turn it, it's going to trip it. So put that on next. We can put a little bit of grease into the teeth there on this reel, the main gear. You don't need to put much. And again, it'll, by distribution, it will take care of itself pretty much so. Okay, I have the washers out at this point in time. They're dry. I like to use a Cal's Universal Drag Grease on fabric washers, so I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit on there. And what I do is I just grab a little bit of the grease, kind of get it on both sides, and then I use that gloved hand as a tool just to rub it in. And I like to wipe the excess off with a paper towel. This is just to keep the washers flexible. So we'll do that one. And then a lineup on that one is you have a fabric washer, and then you have the circular washer. I'm going to do another fabric washer here now. These are in good condition. There's no need to replace these. Again, we'll just make sure we got it in the grooves there. Wipe off the excess with that paper towel. Put that one in. And then the next one up is the keyed or the eared washer. It has the two prongs on it. That sits in the recess on the main gear. One more. Do that on both sides. Rub it in. Rub off the excess. Bring that back on here. And then the last one is the collar washer. And that essentially is the order for this. Now we can do this. Well, let's just make sure we put the spring on it because we don't know if anything is misfiring. So now the spring goes on the assembly. There's a hole here and a hole here. Those are the two pinholes that go with these two posts. So you want to line them up. You're going to get the springs on the top of that carrier arm, and then you should feel this thing just kind of click in. Now this is floating because it's not held in with the groove of the side plate yet, but we should be able to press down on this now. That would be the operation, and then if we turn that, that should pop back up, and it's popping back up. So that's the way this should operate, and maybe what we had was just a little bit of contamination there or something. Looking on the inside of the case, nothing there to a little bit of excess, but nothing there up here that would have impeded the operation of that. So I'm going to just throw a little bit of oil onto the anti-reverse bearing, and then we're going to close this up. So look for the slot that's going to be lined up with the free spool release. Next, look for the two holes for the side case. You should get a little snap. I just felt it there. And then go for the two pieces in your parts tray that are the Phillips head screwdrivers. And let's just go put those in. That's the one side. Here's the other side. You just want to make sure you don't confuse the screws with the one that's in the handle screw. And I may just have done that. We're going to go figure out. Nope, that's the right one. Okay, so no harm, no foul. Okay. Grab that. And again, now that we have it kind of tightened up here, we can push down again, make sure that that's working. Yep, so what was not working before is working now. Something probably just got clogged in there. There wasn't any broken pieces or parts to see. Next up is going to be the ferrule, which is going to be used for the drag adjuster. Then we had these two shim washers, and these are nestled. There's different ways that these can go. They can go back to back and nestle. They can go back to side, which gives you spaces on the outside, and then you can kind of go face to face, where they give you the space on the inside. Now these were nestled, so I'm going to go back and put them that way. So what's the purpose of those micro adjustments? The way that these things work is it can give you some greater degrees of tension in the actual operation of the star drag adjuster knob. So if you're finding that you have too much free play, just swap those tension washers around, and you'll be better. And for some reason, that 14-minute break, my Machine shuts down. We should be back in action now. Okay, handle goes on next. Oops, there's a piece of my parts tray. And that's the beauty of a parts tray. If you look in there and you find something after you got through a process, you'll know you missed a step. There's a little spring tension washer that goes underneath the handle, then the handle, and we can put that E-clip back on. And again, if you got lost along the way, go ahead and look at that schematic. That schematic is going to tell you everything you need to know. It's the blueprint for the reel. I had a little bit of trouble getting this into the slot. That's just not me. It's not a very troublesome thing. And usually you can press it in with your hand. Okay, and then remember we took this off in a clockwise, so to tighten, put this back in, it's counterclockwise. And I like to start these by hand because you don't risk stripping the teeth on the gear shaft. I think we've got this properly set. We can just tighten down the handle now. Yep, we're tightened. Nut cap. And a little more throw to align the screw hole in the nut cap. We've got it lined now. Nut cap screw. And that's the side plate. So let's just go over the other side. We'll make sure that we do the complete service for Lynne there. All right, so we got a nice wheeling one. Put it down, firing, put it down, firing. It's doing what it should. On the spool service, we have a bearing here, so we're going to make sure that that gets lubricated. The rest of it is just the plastic that runs the worm drive and the click lever. So we have 3 more screws on this side we want to take out here just to make sure it's all clean on this side. This reel is very clean to begin with, so I don't anticipate seeing anything under there, but you never know. These also hold the other posts, other side of the posts in. I'm just laying these on my bench. Always dangerous because you can brush them pretty easily and knock them around, and they are small pieces and they can fall, which is why I use the parts tray. But I just expect to look inside, see what we got, and if nothing really is significant, then just close this thing back up. So here's your click mechanism. It's run off of the posts. This one belongs on. Okay, I don't know why I'm having trouble with my machine setting down, but that's not that unusual. Let's go ahead and finish this up then. I want to line up the holes, press down, hold that in. Get our 3 side plate screws back on. So these reels are nice reels. A lot of folks like these for casting. And a lot of folks that traditionally would use a right-handed spinning reel use the left-handed retrieve on these round bait casters. And the idea is that you could throw with your right hand and you wouldn't have to change the grip on your pole to turn the reel back in left-handed. So they're popular. I think the right side seems to be a little bit more popular for drop fishing. But for casting, I myself included, I'm naturally a right-hand person, but I do like the left-hand convenience of not having to switch off on those bait casters. I'm just going to give this a quick turn here and make sure everything's working on that, which it is. While we have this open, we can see how the click tongue now operates going down, which will engage in the back spool and up. Grab that spool and drop that in here. Always fun to try and center it, at least with me. Because you're doing 2 things. You're centering the spool and you're also meshing in with the plastic gears. We can take our side plate in. These are brakes. These brakes can be removed to make the spool run a little bit easier for casting purposes. That's completely up to you. Okay, line up the side plate holes, tighten down on the screws. And this is the C3. This one's made in Sweden. There are some of these Abus are now made in China. So the ones that are obviously pressed in saying made in Sweden are not the Chinese variety. The designs are almost identical. So I'm not sure if in this particular one, if the China versus the Swedish ones make a difference. You can certainly tell the difference on some of the higher end ones like the 7000s, that series, but that has different material and a little bit of a different design going there. Lefty. Got our level line running, firing on the free spool release. Tighten down the drag here. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. I always forget on the lefties. We'll tighten that drag down. We have the fine drag. So the last piece then is just put a little drop of oil into the pawl assembly. To do that, you pull off the cap, pawl cap. This one I noticed has got some grease on the worm gear itself, so there's I don't need to do anything there. Here's your pawl. You don't have to pull it out. You could examine it if you want, but this one seems to be doing just fine. Just flood that with the oil, put the cap back on, tighten that down. And if you put a little too much, there's a weep hole in the bottom of this cap. It will come out. Don't worry if you see a spot of oil on the bottom, but there is a weep hole here in case water or something gets in there. Okay, so Lynne's ready to go back fishing with this one. So that's the reel. That's the 6500. We came in with a little bit of a problem in the free spool release wasn't firing. It's firing now, doing what it should be doing. And you saw that it's a basic design. There's not a lot going on in here in terms of that free spool release, but if you don't have it clean, it can be a problem. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please like it. If you want to see more, please subscribe. Again, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.